Hey guys, welcome to A Film Darkly, and today I'm going to be reviewing The Rise of Skywalker. Yep, I just got back from watching it. Actually watched it in 4DX for the first time. Never watched anything in 4DX, and I decided to see Rise of Skywalker in 4DX. This is really interesting. If you've never experienced 4DX, I think it's something you should. Um, for me, it almost kind of ruins movie watching for me because it's like anytime I see a big epic action film, like the idea of not seeing it in this format, it kind of sounds to me like I'm really not going to be getting the full version of what it can be. I really enjoyed this quite a bit. I enjoyed the 40X experience, that is to say. And I just feel like it would be great for any, a cinematic film that's like epic in nature, like the Avengers, like Marvel movies. Originally I wanted to see Godzilla King of the Monsters, and from what I heard is it was great in MPX, and I mean in RD 40X. So I would have, I'm glad though that the final Star Wars is my first experience, and on to The Rise of Skywalker. What an experience! It's in short, I loved it. I thought it was great. I really loved this movie. I loved how it ended. I loved how the story ended. Just how it all came down, and what we saw. I thought it was great. There's a few things to say about this movie that aren't very, I'm not going to be spoilery in the slightest, but I am going to give more of my thoughts because I have seen some reviews. I know there's a lot of Star Wars fans, who are also movie reviewers who hated it, and I heard some of the reasons they really disliked it. I don't know. Not. Let's not do that. Let's stick with my review for now. So my review is this: I thought the movie started out a little fast paced, like too fast paced, and at first I thought this is what the movie's gonna be, and I kind of felt like it was almost like J.J. Abrams was trying to make up for The Last Jedi, which apparently a lot of people picked up on, but I think some people forced it into more than what it really was. Almost as if Abrams was kind of listened to the fans, really wanted to cater to the fans, and decided that in catering to the fans, he would try and right the wrongs of The Last Jedi, quote unquote, and that he would try and make sense of some stuff. And it felt almost like you got to see episode 8 and episode 9 in one film. Like Abrams was really trying to say, this is what my episode 8 would have done, and this is what my episode 9 now is. And there just wasn't enough time for that. And so it was like speeding through certain things and making certain statements and moving along in that way. But the interesting thing for me was that the movie slowed down and began to explain things. And when it started to explain stuff, all of a sudden it made more sense to me. It became sort of like an ode to Palpatine, an ode to this character. If you know the character Sheev Palpatine, which is his real name, Darth Sidious, the Emperor. If you know his history, his stories, he's kind of like really obsessed with power, and you sort of understand why he is what he is, and his role in this film, and how his role in this trilogy. And some people are kind of calling BS, and they're saying, oh, he originally was never supposed to be involved. I don't know. My point being is that I thought the movie definitely started fast paced. It definitely felt like it was trying to erase The Last Jedi. Not because necessarily J.J. Abrams was angry at The Last Jedi. There's some people who think that, and I've not read any quote from J.J. Abrams where he said, "Oh, it did stuff I didn't want to do." Um, but I think it was more of just trying to please the fans. But the way it slowed down, managed to pace itself, managed to make sense of what it was giving us and telling us, I actually didn't, hate it. I found myself all of a sudden like getting in the groove of the film. And then as I got caught up in the groove of the film, suddenly the story made sense to me. And it was rich. And it moved along well. And it had this really nice, like, fast pace, although taking its time type feel. And it really just paid respects to the original films, which some people seem to be mistaking as fan service. And it's like, no, this is supposed to be the end of Skywalker. It's kind of supposed to pay homage to those things for a particular reason. And I thought this movie did that. I thought it did the things that we needed it to do. It's a fan servicey movie because it naturally has to be. And whether or not like it can be seen as we're redeeming ourselves from The Last Jedi, because so many people disliked it. I mean, I didn't, but lots of people did. Or you could see it as making more sense of what we saw in The Last Jedi. Kind of like adding to the story, which kind of makes sense too because it's a trilogy and it's supposed to be all one story. But I guess what I'm trying to say is I could see why some people might feel a certain way about this film. For me, though, it was very fast paced. At first, I felt like it was trying to erase Last Jedi. Then I felt like, no, it's not really erasing it, it's adding to it. Especially when it started to get into its story and really helping us understand where Palpatine comes in all this, and the story of Rey and Kylo and where that's all going. The story of Leia. I mean, we got to see Leia's story, come to an end, and it was one of the most amazing things for me because I didn't know how they were going to pull that off with Carrie Fisher's death, and they managed to pull it off very nicely, very well. The action is just insane in this movie. I thought it was so good. A lot of the action was just fantastic. Lots of lightsaber fighting, and the ending is just epic. That's all I can really say about it. It's just an epic ending. I guess, it's hard because it's like there comes a point where it's like every time a Star Wars comes out and I love it, I feel as if like maybe I'm just not judging these movies like I judge other movies. Maybe. I mean, there is always a sense of like where I'm not as harsh of a judge on certain films, like even with Marvel films, I'm not as harsh of a judge. Because I understand what Marvel films are trying to do. And it's kind of the same thing with Star Wars. Like, I understand what they're trying to do. If I judge these movies like I judge a real cinematic film, like if I judge them against, say something like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood or Midsommar or, I don't know, I'm trying to think of like another really great like cinematic masterpiece like The Lighthouse, then these movies don't match up. But no movie does. Endgame got all kinds of good reviews. And if I were to match it to The Lighthouse, I would say it's a crap movie. I would say that it's a crappy movie because I judge those movies differently. It's part of the reason why I'm a big fan of Batman vs. Superman and Man of Steel. Because I feel like they're the only kind of movies that have that epic feel, but still manage to be good cinematic films. And for me, those movies kind of top off as like the best action / superhero films ever made because they managed to have that intelligence that you usually see kind of ingrained in very cinematic and naturally cinematic films. And so if I were to look at it from that perspective, sure, I could be a harsher critic. But I try and look at movies from whether or not I enjoy them and whether or not I think they're good and whether or not I think they're fun. I don't compare them all to Midsommar or The Lighthouse because to me those kinds of movies are just elite films because they're artistic films. They're cinematic in the way that of what cinema means. They're the cinephile's dream. It's what a cinephile looks for. Star Wars isn't a cinephile movie. It's a general audience film. Even if you're a big fanboy of Star Wars like I am, it's still a general audience film. That's mostly what it is. And so I don't critique as harshly, but I don't know. Like it's like I almost feel like I'm crazy or something because so many people dislike Last Jedi. So many people are gonna dislike Rise of Skywalker. I already know the fan wise. I actually think there's gonna be more positive than negative. The Last Jedi had more positive than negative, honestly. But I think this is going to be more positive than negative. It's going to look different from the critics because I think there's so much to enjoy in this for general audiences. I don't find that they're going to find themselves judging it like they judged The Last Jedi, which was a film that took its time more and wasn't very fan servicey, kind of did its own thing. I mean, Rian Johnson even has like a quote out there. I don't know for how legit it is, but there's a quote of him supposedly where he kind of says that it's a mistake to cater to fans. Which I don't think he's wrong. I think he's absolutely correct. It's one of the things I loved about The Last Jedi is I thought it was like a breath of fresh air. Rise of Skywalker to me is kind of J.J. Abrams doing what he did with Force Awakens, where it has that same feel where it just feels like Star Wars nostalgia. It's like this is what happens when a fan of the original trilogy makes a sequel and how he's just trying the entire time to keep that feel of the original films. Obviously there's people who loved Force Awakens when it first came out. Then a little while later, they all feel like, one reviewer I was listening to, who's a major Star Wars fan, thinks this trilogy was like a complete disaster. I mean, there's lots of people who it's as bad as the prequels. I don't know. I don't know what to say to people like that. To me, it's like, just give up on Star Wars then. Like, what are you doing? Like, why are you still watching these things? And they need to go back to the series because of Mandalorian. It's like, Mandalorian's good, but come on, man. It's made by the same people that made The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. It's like, you're high if you honestly think that The Mandalorian is, like, that much better. You're kind of, like, caught up on something. I'm not, because I'm enjoying the Mandalorian, but I'm not like, I'm not like feeling like it's better than the films have been. But I mean, one particular reviewer, Christian Harloff, that I was listening to, like, he's just like, they need to just stick to the shows, which is kind of funny. But I don't really want to talk a lot about the toxic fandom, that's going around, which it's not really toxic. It's just it's like I was saying before about. In a previous audio about our podcast about Henry Cavill saying that it's not toxic, it's passion, and it's true, it is passion. But I guess what I want to say is that these passionate fans who are incredibly judgmental of the continuity of what they've come to love, it's just so bad. It's so annoying, and it's just getting to where it's like I don't even want to hear them no more. And I feel like I'm just going to go through it all over again with Rise. But this time I don't think I'm going to defend anything. I'm just not. I'm not defending anymore. Last Jedi I defended, and I'm the Rise of Skywalker I'm not defending. If people hate it, they hate it. I'm tired of, like, revealing to people how some of their points of why they hate a movie just is completely irrelevant and wrong. And I think it's hilarious when people just point to their expectations and they don't realize it's their expectations. It's like, that's just what you wanted. That's why you hated it. It's not any other reason, and I see that a lot with the Star Wars fan base. Just, they dislike movies, not because the movies are actually bad. They dislike them because the movies, like, don't do what they want them to do, and I don't know. Rise of Skywalker is going to get different interpretations. Some people are going to feel like, oh, it's just trying to cover up The Last Jedi and throw in some nostalgia with Palpatine. Some are going to feel like, no, it added on to The Last Jedi. Christian Harloff actually thought thinks that people who love The Last Jedi will hate Rise of Skywalker because it runs over Last Jedi, and it's like, I don't. I kind of loved them both, and I don't feel like it runs it over. I just feel like it adds to it. You know, there was a part of me, like I said, when I first started watching it, where I felt like, oh, it's almost as if he's trying to remake Episode 8. Like there's things he didn't like, and he's trying to pay that back. But it's like, instead, I just felt like he's just sort of adding. And even if you think like, well, he never had this plan from the start, it's like, who cares? It works, doesn't it? You know, to me, it kind of seemed to work. So I don't know. Maybe, you know, maybe not. Who knows? There's so much to think about, and I could see other people's arguments. That's the thing. I could see their arguments. I guess I just choose not to allow that to be something that like I care about, because it's like, to me, as long as the story is coherent, that's what matters. You know, and some people are like, well, if you're a big fan, you'll hate it. If you're not that big of a fan, you'll like it. And it's like, no, I'm a big fan. I'm a bigger fan than most people. And I loved it. So I don't know. I guess in the end, what I want to say about Rise of Skywalker is, you know, is it a movie that's like flawless? No, not at all. It's not better than A New Hope. It's not better than Empire. I'm not the biggest fan of Return of the Jedi. So for me, like, there are Star Wars movies that go over Return of the Jedi. This being one of them. This being a movie I would rewatch over The Last Jedi. I mean, over The Last Jedi. Over Return of the Jedi. You know, I would definitely throw this up there, because I've enjoyed this trilogy. I really have. And I haven't felt like, you know, I kind of get that notion of like rewriting, and I get what people are saying, and when you hear that, you can't help but want to look at the movie that way, especially when you thought that at first, you know, like I did. But I think in the end, I'm just happy. I'm happy with the way the story went. I'm happy with what they chose to do with Kylo Ren and Rey, and how they chose to fulfill that storyline. I really like that. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the addition of Palpatine. I thought it made perfect sense why he was there. I thought they explained it well. I thought the action was great. I thought the ending was epic. And in the end, I loved this movie. I really did. I really love this movie. It's not without its flaws. This trilogy's not without its flaws, you know, because there was obviously backlash from Last Jedi, to the point that, to the point that these people felt, you know, that J.J. Abrams felt the need to try and explain things away. And I get that. I really do understand that. So, I don't know. In the end, I still really enjoyed The Rise of Skywalker. And, yeah, I'm going to go see it again and again. Probably see it at least 3 times. 2 more times, maybe 3 more times. Who knows? But, yeah. So I love The Rise of Skywalker. I thought it was very enjoyable. I'd give it like an 8 out of 10 if I, rating it. It didn't feel as philosophical as The Last Jedi, which is probably my only issue. I'll have to look more deeply into it to see if it's really there. I felt like The Last Jedi, though, had a deep philosophy to it that I really enjoyed, whereas this movie just didn't have that. And that's okay. It didn't have to. The previous Star Wars just never really did. They were just, well made. And, so I enjoyed The Rise of Skywalker. I enjoyed, what they did with it in the ending. Like I said, with the way it started out, it was so fast-paced. Felt like it was trying to, basically give us Episode 8 in 10 minutes. Abrams' version of Episode 8 in 10 minutes. And kind of just explain away The Last Jedi. That, I did at first feel kind of like, oh crap, I'm not going to like this. And then as the movie smoothed on, and I let myself kind of drop my expectations. I remember at one point literally telling myself, don't think about how good this is or how good it isn't. Let yourself experience it. Let yourself fill this movie out. When it's over, see how you feel. And I just remember nearing the ending, I was just like, I'm loving this. and just really happy and had a big smile on my face. So I didn't walk out of the theater disappointed at all. I walked out of the theater pretty happy, pretty excited, and I really don't care what anyone else thinks. My review is positive, and that's all that matters. So 8 out of 10 for me. The Rise of Skywalker. I look forward to the rest of the movies. Mandalorian's going to be finishing up next week with episode 8, and once they do that, I think I'm going to go ahead and just review the whole series, the whole season. I did kind of think about doing episode to episode, but I'd rather just do the whole season. To give you an idea of how I feel, I'm loving it, obviously. And, I love the world of Star Wars. Admittingly, it's hard for Star Wars to do really wrong for me, but I didn't love the prequels, so anyways, so let's go ahead and end it there. Thank you guys for listening. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, do all that stuff, and leave me reviews. So anyways, talk to you guys next time. Bye.